Hello, AP Worlders. Welcome to the Foundations Era Civilizations lecture. These civilizations are also known as the River Valley Civilizations. Here's a map to show where these River Valley Civilizations were located. All right, we have Mesopotamia, which is between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. We have the Indus people, which are along the Indus River. We're going to study the Shang in China, which were along the Yellow River. All right, we'll study Egypt, which is along the Nile River, the Olmecs, and then the Shavin. These two were not along riverbanks, as the Eurasia ones were located on the riverbanks. The Shavin are going to be located in the Andes Mountains. About 5,000 years ago, these urban societies developed. They developed independently, all right, and at different times. All right, so they all didn't start right at the same time. But these societies are going to have some similarities. The first similarity is they're going to have agricultural surplus. All right, that's going to be important because that's going to lead to specialization of labor. The second similarity would be the creation of cities and complex institutions such as political bureaucracies. Bureaucracy is when you divide government to different groups to be in charge of different things. There are also another similarity is they're going to create large armies. Fourth, they're going to create organized religion. Another similarity is they're also going to have stratified social hierarchies. All right, meaning they're going to organize the people in their society on a hierarchy scale. Another similarity is they're going to organize long distance trade relationships. Most of these societies were patriarchal. As populations grew, competition for surplus resources led to even greater social stratification. All right, so as these River Valley civilizations grew in population, it became even more competitive as to who would control these resources. All right, and so that competition led to greater restraints on grouping the people. The competition from the increased population is also going to lead to increased trade, and it's going to cause more complex governments and religious systems and record keeping. But as the civilizations expanded, the need for more resources also had some negative effects, such as the environmental concerns, increased warfare between communities. All right, this increased warfare is going to drive the development of new technologies of war and urban defense. These foundation-era civilizations are going to leave a lasting impact. Some of the things that show their impact, first are the monuments that they built. Here's an example in Egypt of the monuments that they built. All right, the creation of the wheel in Mesopotamia. All right, also horses, right, and taming the horses. Creation of writing systems. All right, whether it was this example of cuneiform, which was in Mesopotamia, or hieroglyphics. All right, but creating some kind of writing systems. All right, also creating calendars, and once again, creating bureaucracy-style governments. All right, we're going to look at each of these River Valley civilizations a little bit closer. The first one we'll look at is ancient Mesopotamia. Once again, it was located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Some of the groups that are going to occupy this Mesopotamia are the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians. When these two rivers would flood, once the flooding left, it would be very fertile soil. But the problem was the flooding was unpredictable. Some inventions that the Mesopotamians have is... Sorry, I forgot to change slides. But some of the inventions Mesopotamia would create, first is cuneiform writing. All right. Second are some of these temples, these ziggurat temples that they use for religious purposes. One of the biggest came from the Babylonians, which is known as the Hammurabi Code. All right, this is kind of considered one of the first written government systems in the world. All right, and then we also have the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is an epic poem. All right, it's considered one of the first earliest writings that we have of poetry. They also invented the wheel, sail. They did have slaves, but their slaves were either from war, or they had a debt, or they committed a crime. All right, next we have ancient Egypt. As you can see from the map, it's surrounded by desert, right? But along the Nile River, it would be the same thing. When it would flood, after the flood left, it would be fertile soil for the Egyptians. This desert around them actually was good for them because it gave them protection from outsiders. The good thing about the Nile River was it was predictable when the flood would happen. All right, so in Mesopotamia they couldn't predict it, and sometimes the crops would be wiped out. But in Egypt they knew how to predict it. In the Egyptian society, here's a good look at a stratified social hierarchy. All right, this is one that we have for Egypt. Then at the top is the pharaoh. The pharaoh, he was like a god king. They had like a theocracy style government. They also were polytheistic. They believed in an afterlife, and they mummified their leaders. Hence the pyramids. And they would bury their leaders in the pyramids with riches. And they believed that they could use those riches in the afterlife. One monotheistic group would form in Egypt, and that was the Jewish people of Judaism. But they're going to be treated as slaves because they were monotheistic, and the rest of Egypt was polytheistic. But we'll talk more about Judaism during our next unit. The hieroglyphics was their writing style. And also women had more rights in Egypt compared to the other river valley civilizations. Women could even be pharaohs in Egypt. All right, here's a look at ancient India and China during this time period. All right, so here's the Indus group, China. You can see their location compared to Mesopotamia and Egypt. It is believed that during the Foundation era that the Egyptians, Mesopotamia, and Indus would have contact with each other. So that's why they're all in green for trade. The Indus people were a collection of unified city-states. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro are the two largest of those city-states. They did have a writing system, but historians still have not been able to decipher their writing. They did have advanced cities, or these city-states were advanced because they had plumbing systems. There was a very mysterious ending of how these city-states ended. They're not sure if they were, historians aren't sure if they were invaded or environmental concerns as to why they ended. The Shang of China, they developed along the Yellow River, and they surrounded their city with walls. They were a heavy patriarchal society, and they had a landed aristocracy, or people who owned the land, at the top. And they were good at producing bronze and silk. Now we move over to the Americas. The first group was the ancient Olmecs. They were located in Mesoamerica or Central America. They were also a collection of city-states. And they were also ruled by a landed aristocracy. They had a writing system and a calendar, but the biggest thing they were known for are their large stone heads like these. Historians aren't sure who the large stone heads represented, whether they were leaders or great warriors. We don't know. They also were known for their jade carvings that they left behind. The last people are the Chavan people, who were located in the Andes Mountains of South America. They had no evidence of art or writing, but they did have the use of this system, this cupol system, which is a series of knotted cords that are used for accounting. They had no walls, so we assumed that they were peaceful people. As you can see, there were also people in Papua New Guinea who we aren't going to be a major group that we're going to to focus on during this time period. All right, but now just to apply the themes to these river valley civilizations. All right, our first theme: interaction between humans and environment. Right, so environment influenced where these groups would settle first and foremost. All right, so the majority settled near rivers. All right, so the Eurasia, Africa, right, they settled near rivers. These two would be the exception, not settling near rivers. Agriculture had effects on the environment. All right, as they expanded with more people, they had to expand their land for more resources, and they would often use slash and burn farming techniques, which would destroy the environment. Second, development and interaction of cultures. Culture played a significant role in unifying the states. All right, so they had to build a culture to unify them, and they used laws, language, literature, religion, and arts in order to unify these people. Because remember, before this, they were hunters and gatherers. They lived in small bands. So in order for people to unite, they had to have a common culture in order to unite them. All right, early civilizations, they developed monumental architecture and urban planning, such as pyramids or the sewers that we talked about in the Indus. All right. They also kept a system of record keeping, such as hieroglyphics or cuneiform or cupel. And they also had new religions developed during this time period. We had the Vedics in Indus. We had Hebrews in Egypt. And we also are going to have Zoroastrianism and the Persians. All right, we'll talk about each of the religions a little bit later, except for the Vedic religions in Indus, because that would go into Hinduism. All right, the next development is state building, expansion, and conflict. That's our third one. And the rulers of these early states often claimed divine power, all right, meaning that their power came from God. And they would enjoy the military to support them. Some would develop legal codes, such as Hammurabi and the Babylonians. But all these legal codes would reflect existing hierarchies. All right. Next, fourth is economic systems. And that was that trade expanded through this period from local to regional. All right. So the previous map that I showed you, where it showed Mesopotamia and Egypt, and Mesopotamia and Indus trading with each other. All right. So trade was going to expand to further distances. All right. Then last, social structures. We have the creation of these social hierarchies. All right. And like we said, as the places got bigger, the social hierarchies became even stricter. All right. And we also are going to have intense patriarchal societies as well, with Egypt being the exception, where women had more rights. All right. So that's it for the River Valley civilizations.